the survey is when I start a class, I tell the class and I genuinely want to create a community among the class. That is my objective right from the beginning. And I know we have 30 some students, they come from different backgrounds, different experiences. It's really tough to create a cohesive community. But the first week activities, I completely have a mindset of creating a safe place for students. And so we do a number of sort of getting to know you activities, and I make sure that I get to learn a little bit about them as they're learning about me and the class content. Um, and then I tell them, I highly encourage them. I don't force it on them. I highly encourage them to complete this survey. With the idea, I tell them, and this is how I introduce it. I say, um, this survey will give me more in-depth information about the community that is present here. And I'm going to share this information with you all so that you all get to know who makes up this community. And with that introduction, I've gotten fairly a good amount of response with the surveys. And I then remind them, I take about 2 classes to remind them, this is one of your first initial tasks. So when I remind them, getting started, aside from buying your books and reading the syllabus, one of the tasks to get us started is to complete this introductory survey. I give no points, it's no extra credit, nothing. It's just an encouragement. I tell them if you, I would appreciate if you if you complete the survey. It typically takes about 5 minutes to complete. I generally have gotten a good response from the students, and it's really easy. It's on D2L. I have it set up as a survey within D2L. And so I'll go into sort of the mechanical pieces of that. If you're interested in finding out how to set up a survey within D2L, it's fairly easy to do so. So I'm going to keep it pretty informal. Like I said, I'm going to go through the questions, but if a question pops up in your mind and you want me to sort of address a question, I don't mind questions in the midst. Like I said, I don't have a formal sort of agenda. I just wanted to share. This is a practice that I've been doing for a while, and I thought maybe others might be interested in seeing it. So stop me at any point, or if you want to use the chat at any point, go ahead and do so. So one of the questions that I ask is about parental education. I'm always interested in, and as you working at a community college, you know that a fair amount of students in your class are going to be first generation students. So I'm always curious about, okay, now that I'm starting this semester, what percentage of the students are first generation students? How many students have parents at home that have completed a bachelor's degree and or a master's degree? That's sometimes interesting. Very seldom do I get students that say that they have a parent with a terminal degree, which is not surprising given the environment that we're in. So I asked this question very simply: the highest degree or education level completed by either parent or / primary caregiver, because sometimes students are not living with a parent. They're living with an aunt that is their primary caregiver or something like that. So I asked them to respond in that way. If you're from the years that I've looked at, I'm looking at the chart that I have on the side. The lowest amount of first generation students that I've had is 38% of the student population. The highest amount, if I'm looking, this is from 2021 to the beginning of 2023. In that 2-year span, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sections that I've taught. The highest percentage was spring 2022 at 73%. 73% of students um, that I had in that class, and it was a low enrolled class. It was 15 students, so I guess that may change the percentages there. And so it varies from 38% to almost 70% of students that I've seen meet the criteria of first generation. And so
And one question, sorry to interrupt. Will you remind me, was this survey for all the classes you teach? Is it just for intro to psych courses or just for a particular course you're
I
teaching?
do it for all my classes, but
Okay.
the data that I'm sharing or that I will be sharing is specifically the introductory course.
Okay.
So I teach the Psych 100 introduction to psychology. That's really the one that I've been looking at the data the most. Those are the most sections that I have. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
But I do it with every class.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess, yeah. So what I do with this one, when I present the data to the students, I tell the students that this is a good time to see around the room and learn that other students don't have the support at home as they might have. And then I share my story too, because this is a good introduction for my story. I was a first generation student, and I share sort of the struggle of being a first generation student, having to do a lot of the college going tasks on my own. So I take that time to share my story when I share this data. And I tell them, some students uh, may not have the support that you have at home because their parents don't have that type of experience. Then I ask about employment. Again, very typical of community college population, right? We know about 70% of students work 20 hours or more a week. And so I just like to see that. Does that data, the national data, sort of match with what I'm seeing in my class? And so I asked them about work. How, in a typical week of while you're coming to class, how much do you work? And so I get a variation, but on that mark of 20 hours a week of more, um, I got a class 75%, 78%. The smallest percentage was in fall 2021, 33% work 20 hours a week or more. And then it's interesting to see how many do not work at all, right? The 0 hours that are not currently employed. And that's what I share with students when I share this data and they get to see the differences in percentages. I tell them it's important, especially where I don't assign right now in my intro class, I don't have any group projects, but I would imagine if in your class you're thinking about group projects and you're thinking about students doing work outside of the class, this might be a good data point to take a look at, right? If you got most students working 30 hours or more a week, it's going to be very tough for them to find time to meet outside of class. Then there's a bunch of I sort of categorize them under resources/basic needs. Um, and it's just an agreement scale. So I ask them to respond to each of these statements on a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. And here are some of the statements or resources that I seek to find out. The first one is about food or food insecurity, right? So I simply ask, um, I or my family have enough food to eat every day. I also ask about a housing, right? So I have a stable, a safe, and consistent place to live. I have enough money to buy. So this is financial stuff. And I ask it in two different ways. One is about books and supplies because sometimes students find resources to be able to pay for books and or tuition. But then the second question I ask is, does my family have enough money to pay essential bills on time? Right. And coming from a past of poverty myself, I remember that struggle. I remember that stressor of my parents having to try to make ends meet, right, on a week to week basis. And so I talk about that as part of my story as well. And then because I use D2L, even in my in-person classes, I use D2L as an enhanced course. So a lot of the stuff, a lot of the quizzes that I do are going to have to rely on D2L and on internet service. So I expect to have reliable internet access, appropriate for listening to online audio, etc. And this is particularly important for my online classes. So I ask this question and make sure that they're equipped to do well in an online environment. And then I have adequate technology to conduct audio, video meetings. That's more specific to my online classes, and especially when during COVID, when we were doing the synchronous classes and such. But I kept it there just to see how the trend sort of changes. And then I asked the mental health question. This is a question that I felt really strong that I had to include. Um, and the way that I ask it, because some people are afraid to ask about this, but the way that I ask it is a family member currently living in the home and or myself struggle with a mental health problem, right? And it's on this agreement scale that strongly agree and or strongly disagree. And through the times, this is something that I've always been curious. On average, it's about 50% of students that say they agree or strongly agree with this statement, right? I think the 27% seems to be the on the lower end that I've gotten. Um, and this is a great topic, so I like presenting this back to the students because they get to see that, especially when it's at 50%, right? For some students, it's a new picture, it's a new reality that's saying 50% of the people that are here are actually struggling with some type of mental health issue. And so for me, this is an important way to destigmatize mental health as well, right? Because I start talking about it and students start seeing that others are struggling with it. And then the people that are actually struggling with it, you're making it real for them, right? Um, you're making it matter for them. It's like, yeah, my experience with mental health actually matters. And my professor is making it known that this is not just me, right? There's other people that struggle with mental health. So I love this question, and I think it offers a great opportunity for students then to feel that they matter. These next two are more sort of demographic questions, veteran status and language status. The reason I asked for veteran status is just in case I need to relay information that is more specific to veterans. Um, and really, in my classes, I've never gotten more than one if that are veterans. But every time that somebody says yes, I make sure to offer them some information about veteran services that we have on campus. And by the way, that's the next thing I have created, and I'll share both this and a resource page that I just started about a year ago, especially for my online class, because I thought I'm just collecting this data and then I'm not doing anything with it. And so I created this resource page. When I share the information about this survey with the students, I also share a resource that is part of our campus or part of our community that they can access. Now, the language status, the reason why I ask that question is very pertinent, especially to the Latino students in the class. I went to high school with a predominantly Latino population. My high school was almost all Latinos, maybe a handful of white students, a handful of Black students, but mostly Latino students. My friend circle, my circle of friends, and my family at home, we all spoke Spanish. Uh, the reason why that's important, especially the English professor here, who's that new English professor here?
It's me, Patrick.
Patrick. Yeah, I didn't speak good English when I started I didn't know that either, right? I didn't know that at the time. I was behind when I first applied, when I started at NIU as an undergraduate student. I had to take a remedial class in reading and writing. And then I realized this is why, right? My English came secondary in all of my social circles. And so I keep that in mind because psychology in and of itself is just a different language. And then if they're learning English, um, at least more acceptable English, it's going to be a greater challenge. And so I like to ask, say, how many of them are more used to speaking a different language at home? Because that sets a flag, an alert flag for me saying, okay, I got to make sure if it's a great percentage of students that are, I would say for me, I usually use 25 to 30% of students. If the first language is different than English, then I have to spend extra attention on the vocabulary piece right from the beginning. And I do. Then I ask, I don't know, for some of you, you already know if I'm a big advocate for immigrant rights in general, but I'm also highly involved with the undocumented student services on our campus and trying to build better services and practices for undocumented students. And so I chair one of the committees that is part of the ESEC group that focuses on undocumented students. And so for that matter, I find it important for us to find out if this is a stressor that students are having to face, right? Especially being in a Hispanic serving institutions. Now, Latinos are not the only ones that are immigrants or undocumented immigrants. However, they are the largest percentage, definitely here in Illinois and nationwide, um, that are undocumented. And so it's very relevant to if you're working here at ECC or at any other HSI, I think it's a very adequate question to ask. Oh, Lucas, I just saw a question, sorry, from Lucas in the chat. Are current National Guard considered veteran per college policy?
Tyler and I are searching for the answer. I don't think either one of us is confident in the response we found yet, but it looks like if they were called to active duty, then potentially they are considered veterans. So we will continue to look for a more definitive answer, an official answer, and get back to you.
I ask because I have two who are currently like National Guard reserves, and so like they frequently cycle out, and we have to like work on make-up dates and stuff like that. And so I'm like, are they eligible for anything for that time that they're serving? I mean, just curious.
Oh,
Yeah, for
interesting.
Like I mean, they have to go do orders and drills and stuff like that. And I have one who this semester he's going to end up missing. I think it's like 6 days, but he's already scheduled to make them up. It's not that he's trying to get out of the work.
yeah,
Right.
yep.
So I'm like, okay, this guy's giving up a weekend every month, you know.
And that's really interesting, right? It's my guess is the discipline that it takes to be involved in the National Guard carries over to being a student because when I've had those cases, Lucas, is the same experience. They tell me ahead of time, they try to plan it, they make up the work. It's not like they're trying to get out of the work. They they're great students, right? In general. Yeah.
I'll get back to you if I find anything definitive. I'll throw some links in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. So the way that I ask this question about immigration is I worry often about immigration related issues for either myself or my family members. Because if you realize or not, right, even if you're not undocumented, but you have a parent or a sibling that's undocumented, it's a constant worry, right? Are they going to be detained at some point if they have no protection? Is there going to be a raid in their job? Are we secure here, right? And especially just politically, where when there was some more negative rhetoric around immigration, it gets scarier for people that live with this worry. So I find it important. And then, so for me, this is a good, even if it's one person that says, I agree or strongly agree. And typically, let me just take a quick look. I don't have, yeah, typically is like 1 to 3 in a class that would say I agree or strongly agree with this statement. And so I just make it a point to state, to kind of let them know that I'm an advocate, let them know that if they want to find out more information, whether it's legal information or financial information, I'm here to help with that information. And then this is unique to introductory surveys. As a psychologist, I understand too the importance of identity and how identity kind of plays or interconnects with how people feel like they belong in every environment that they step into, right? And so I ask questions about identity. In this type of scale, I use the importance scale, so very important versus very unimportant. And I choose only these social categories, and I know that there's a lot more that I could choose from, but this is just to give them a sense that I'm trying to get to know them at a different level. And also when I share this information, it's even more powerful, and I'll share what that looks like in a minute. So I ask about gender identity. So the statement looks like my gender identity is an important part of who I am. Then I ask about race and ethnic identity, religion, sexual orientation. And then I leave an open-ended question of what other parts of your identity are important to who you are, right? And I get all kinds of things because sometimes students don't really know what social identities really are. And so I get students saying my personality is important. And so I'm like, okay. But I leave it open for them to state whatever else is important. What I do with this question, which I really like, is it's followed then by this question, that it's another heavy stressor, right? That they say, I worry that other people will not accept me because of my identity, right? And a lot of times it never fails. It's not a lot of students, but I usually get at least 1 to 3 students that I think the most I've gotten is, yeah, 3 um, that have stated that they either agree or strongly agree with this statement. And so this section, when I share this section in class, this allows me to say, some of these social identities are not important to you, and that's okay. But I want you to recognize or acknowledge that there's other students that you're going to be interacting with, especially when we're going to have a discussion, that these identities are important to them, right? And let's try to respect where they're coming from, and let's try to keep them safe, at least in this environment. And then I bring up the last question, this identity stress question. I say, in this class, there's about 2 or 3 people that just generally don't feel like they're accepted. And so let's all work to providing an environment with those that everyone feels accepted. So again, it allows us to open up that environment as a safe place, as an accepting place, as a place that they actually belong, right? Collectively, all these questions are telling them, yeah, you belong here, right? You matter. Well, I guess before I move to this document, this is the resource document that I briefly mentioned. Any questions or thoughts about the questions that I've asked?
One question I'll ask Manuel is the question that you had about like sort of students' mental health concerns or sort of mental challenges of them or somebody in their family. You said that that can be a challenging question for faculty. And so are there ways, and like it seems like this is a question you sort of worked on and drafted to get to where you have it now. Like, are there ways you encourage people like, oh, here's things to avoid asking with that question, or things you would say, oh, here's what this question does better than other questions may do in terms of like earlier drafts, if that makes sense.
Ah, yes.
There we go. That one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think staying away from diagnoses, like some people are struggling with something, but they've never been properly diagnosed with something. And you don't have to be, right, to struggle with something, but I think it's much more confidential to ask that question about you or your family members been diagnosed with a psychological disorder. So I would stay away from that word.
Yeah.
And otherwise, leaving it this open, right? I struggled a little bit with the struggler part, right? With that word struggle myself. There's other words that perhaps can be replaced with struggle, maybe live with, maybe experience with. But I was intentional with struggle, meaning that tells me that they are experiencing some challenge with the mental health issue that they're dealing with, right? But that one could be replaced. I mean, it could be a little softer, like live with to start off. That still tells you that they have some experience with a mental health problem, but
I appreciate you mentioning that because it's helpful to see like how much sort of thought and intentionality went into like that question in terms of the types of things you want to get from students, the types of things that are most helpful from them. So I appreciate you sharing that.
yeah. Lisa?
I also distinctly remember learning, like in a survey class, that when you ask a question this way, that it's not just you, it might be somebody close to you, that provides enough of a cushion that a respondent is going to be a little more comfortable answering truthfully. You know, so when you want to get at those sticky issues, you know, if you can expand that sphere a little bit, they might be more likely to respond honestly. So that's a good element of that question as well.
Yeah. And I didn't think about the proper survey questions when I was constructing this, but I was also thinking it's when we're looking at mental health, sometimes it's not us as the individual, but if there's someone at home that is severely depressed, that's still a stressor, right? And or someone at home that is struggling with substance abuse, that is still a stressor on the whole system of the family. And so that's why I think it's important to include, if you're going to include one question, then to include it in this way that is more inclusive. But you can branch this off to 2 questions as well. Then it would break some of the rules that Lisa was talking about of making it softer. But okay, so the resource, and I'll share this one too. I don't think I put or actually I'll leave it as viewer for now, and you can modify it later. So this is a sort of a beginning doc that I created. I started to think, okay, so if I get a response from students that say that they have food insecurity or housing concerns, what do I say? Where do I send them? Right? So for food insecurity, I always mention the Spartan Pantry. And so that's a live link. And especially, like I said, this is what I sent over to my online students. In class, I just take students straight to the website and say, this is our Spartan Pantry, and it's really well stocked, and it's is run by our students. You pay for this service. And so anyway, so it offers that outlet or that resource. Housing is pretty tricky. Honestly, I offer these resources, but these may not be enough. And I always recommend students, when I see that, I say at the end of, when I share the data of the survey, I say, for the person or the people that said housing is an issue, I encourage you to come talk to me, and let's consider your case and see how I can be more helpful. But in general, it leads me to send them to, or at least give them information about the Wellness Center and about the ECC Foundation Scholarship. The Foundation Scholarship is great because it's not just, and this is what I remind them, that it's not just for tuition, that there's resources through the Foundation Scholarships that could be used for other items or other needs as well. The financial security, it's the obvious, right? Foundation scholarships, a financial aid counselor, academic advisor, all these areas of support that students can begin. And the one that I just added lately, this was, I think I just added it last year. I use a textbook. I don't know if everyone uses a textbook, but sometimes students have trouble with affording their textbooks. And so I always remind them that our publishers offer a trial period for free that gives them access to the textbook material for the first 14 to 20 days, I think, depends on who the publisher is. I'm looking at Lisa's chat comment. Sorry, to further disseminate the Spartan Adventure, encourage all students to take advantage and put you forget your lunch. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good, thank you, Lisa. That's a good approach. Kind of normalizing that. Sometimes we just forget to bring our lunch, or sometimes we forget our wallet and we can't buy lunch. And so good idea. This is the internet access. I think we've gotten a pretty good job as a college offering also laptops for students, or borrowing laptops, and then obviously hotspots for students. So that's something that we can share with students, especially this is my online students. And then the mental health question, definitely with the Wellness Center. And now I've shared, I'm sure you all have Corsair and the Wellness Center developed this video that introduces their services. And they shared, he's shared this link that I've shared here is the link to that video from the Wellness Center. So then I just share it with the students. Check out this video and see the services that we are readily available to you. And that's as far as I've gotten with the resource page. But it's this is the response that I use to communicate with students thereafter, especially my online students, because it's a quick template for me to just to grab and paste it over to an email or document that I'm sending to them after I show them the data. So I'm going to transition to showing you how it looks like for them. And but before I move there, feel free to ask me any any other question or a thought came up, that's fine. On D2L, there's already a survey tab, right, that I send students to. Sometimes this tab is not at the top. And so if you don't see it readily at the top, you can always go to more and you'll find it in this drop-down menu. Another survey that I do, as you can see here, is a sense of belonging survey that I've been doing for quite a while as well. That is something that I do at the end of the semester. But here's the introductory survey. And if you would like to have it, I'm completely open to sharing. If you have a D12 page and you just want to plop this survey into your page, it's really easy to do. I just send it over to our distance learning folks and they put it on your page upon your request. So it's really easy to do. And then you can just modify it as you see fit from there as well, so that you don't have to start from zero. But it looks like this for them, right? Is the 11 questions that they get to answer. And then after they, this is sort of like a welcome message that I usually include in the survey, kind of encouraging them to complete the survey. And the nice thing about these surveys, if you haven't used them yet, there's a way to, if you want to, you can look at the data two different ways. You can export the data into like an Excel sheet so that you can then do whatever analysis you want to do with that data. Or you can use the D2L's sort of analysis as well. So if I go to this class is from this semester, if I go to statistics, and I can just go view overall results at the bottom, they give me a report like this for every question. And at the beginning, because I didn't want to take a lot of time on my end, I used to just do this in class. I would just go to the view overall results and I would tell students, this is the results from the survey, right? In this case, 29 students out of 30 completed, so it's really good response rate. As you can see here, 33% would be first generation students. This is the work environment or the work question. This is the resource question. And as you can see, I have 2 students, right, that I had to follow up with, that they stated that they don't have a stable place to live and having trouble with food. Same thing with money. It might be the same 2 people, right, that said, I disagree with this statement about money. And so when I see that, I feel really good about me taking some time in the following class and actually reviewing some of those resources. So knowing that I already do this, so for those of you that you might be trying it for the first time, I already have integrated time that I know I'm going to use in class, because this takes showing them the data and then showing them the resources. I usually plan about half an hour for any given class to take for this. And I already have it integrated because it's part of my beginning sort of community building activities. And so I built it into the schedule. There's the mental health question. This time around, as you can see, is 9 students agreed or strongly agreed with this statement about mental health. So there's a lot of students that are struggling. Hey, I got 2 veterans. That's interesting. I told you all 1 was the max. Okay. in 21. So 8 students, as you can see, that's 27% of the students in my class right now have a first language that's other than English. And then I don't think I included that. I do ask them, what is your primary language spoken at home? And the ones that I get more typically is Polish. I mean, beyond Spanish, you all know that Spanish would be one, but beyond Spanish, I get Polish, Tagalog, Urdu, and one said, and I know exactly who this student is, she said, we speak British English. So she was a foreign exchange student, not exchange student. She came from England. She was really fun to have in class. So that's how this looks like, right? You can use this report, or if you want to export it, it's not that difficult to export either. So if you go to reports, and I don't see this class here. This is my 105 class. So all I do is edit, report setup. I want to add a report. So I just name it. I'm going to do Psych 100, 105. And then at the bottom, it tells you, who do you want to release the report to? And really it's just who's going to read the report. And sometimes I used to just put faculty, but that doesn't show me all the data. And so now I've been used to just clicking on both of these administrators. So I'm the administrator of the D2L, but I'm also the faculty. And so I click on those two and then press save. And then once you do that, you can then go to the introductory survey, go to reports, and then you'll see the report that you created. And then you generated Excel. And then that exports the data over to an Excel sheet. And then you can begin, like I have done. I've begun some analysis, as you can see here. Right, for over the years, and there's still a lot. I haven't gotten to the 2023. I have probably another 6 or 7 sections that I need to add. But I go through, I create tabs for myself at the bottom for that way I can see kind of the more specific information for every section. But this, you play around and you create, what matters to you, or what the type of data that you want to collect. Any questions? So I'm gonna log off, or I'm gonna stop sharing and just open. That's what I usually do with this survey. So any questions or thoughts, or?
Does it let you see, is there a way you can see the report where you could see an entire row of a student's response? So you said, okay, 2 students said they had food insecurity. I wonder if those are the same 2 students who said that they had financial insecurity or what have you. Like if you saw the student level results, even though it's still anonymous, you'd be able to put 2 and 2 together. Have you ever looked at it that way?
I haven't looked at it that way, but I think you can when let me go back to one of
Yeah.
the other screens. I
You know,
think
or if someone said that they felt not accepted because of their identities, then you could see how they answered those other questions.
yeah, I think we can. If I could even see they are not de-identified, actually. I don't show this to their students, but
Oh, okay, you do see it. All right, so
Yeah.
you can reach out with the resources. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I can see each individual's response if I wanted to. I've never treated it that way, because I tell them ahead of time, I'm only going to share the aggregate of information. But if I wanted to, I could go to, in this case, Daniela's attempt, right? And see how she responded across the board. But I've never done that yet. I suppose if I
Yeah.
was, the other question about mental health, so Tyler, that you asked, that's why I don't ask. I contemplated asking about suicide. But that's why I don't ask about suicide, because I'm afraid I don't have the resources given, in the place that they're answering the question and the classroom that we're in, I don't have the resources to reach out if in case they're struggling with suicide. Anything else?
Notice that sharing the results of the survey to the class as a group make a change in the climate, like do the students are more like understanding to each other? Because when I give the survey just for me, I collect the data and then it's useful for me to know who my students are and their backgrounds. I also had questions related to the background with languages and with Spanish, but it's important to me. But do you think that also like sharing this helps the students to get to know, to get a better sense of who they are within the classroom? Does this make sense?
Yeah. For me, it's anecdotal. It's like I don't have an actual measure to tell you, yeah, this is how I measured the change in sort of camaraderie or community building, right? But I think anecdotally, I can see the relationship that is built beyond there, when I do share with the rest of the class. For two reasons. I've gotten, when I'm addressing the resources with students, right, I can see the way that students interact with the information that I'm sharing. And so that gives me an opportunity to know, okay, who's really engaged with this information. And beyond that, I like the fact that they're seeing that others, even if they don't say it, right, you're destigmatizing a lot of these things that are really difficult to share, right? And so for me, if I do just that, if I destigmatize that a little bit, whether it's financial troubles or mental health troubles or housing troubles, I think I'm doing a good job. But I don't have an actual measure for that. I mean, I wish. I'm working on that. Like the sense of belonging scale that I use, that's why I use that. But even if the sense of belonging is good, there's not a one-on-one relationship between the resource that I'm sharing and sense of belonging, right? So I got to work on that. It's something to work towards. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming and hearing how I use this introductory survey, and I hope that's helpful. If you need to reach out, like I said, if you are serious about wanting to use this survey, I have no problem having the distance learning dropping this survey into your D2L page. So just let me know.
Thanks very much, Mel.
All right.
Thank you, Manuel.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for all the information.
Right, thank you, Manuel. Have a good rest of your
Okay.
day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.